Good afternoon. Welcome to Contramundum. Today we will be discussing perhaps the most controversial chapter in Stephen Wolfe's very controversial book, The Case for Christian Nationalism. That chapter is The Christian Prince. So we're going to discuss the Christian Prince. What does that mean? Does Stephen Wolfe want us to have a king, a dictator? Is that what he's saying? Why does he hate the Constitution? Right? Is that what what he's talking about here? Something else. But before we begin, let me introduce to you my co-host, the star of the show, CJ Engel. Hello, CJ. How are you?
I'm all right. You got a lousy star, but I'm all right.
You got a lousy what?
You said I'm the star of the show, and I was
Oh,
like, that's,
no!
yeah,
Stop it!
that's
No! The star of the show,
this
CJ
is our
Engel.
last. This is our last episode where we have never met in person.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, everyone's worried. Like, this is our last episode where we've never met in person. But yeah, we will next week. We're getting
Yeah.
together. We're gonna do a show live in person together. And so I'm as long I might be flying on a 737, and so I'm rolling the dice there.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Lord
Maybe we'll see
willing,
you there.
next week.
Yeah.
Lord willing, next week we will do it live together. But why don't we jump in with this chapter? It's gonna be a book report, so hopefully we don't bore everyone to death. But
The Christian Prince can never bore anyone.
this ain't gonna bore anybody. So it begins here, chapter 7. We'll just read through it. Hopefully we're not breaking any copyright laws. This is fair use. Don't sue me. Canon Press. Chapter 7, The Christian Prince. It begins with a quote from Henry Bullinger. There is more true virtue in one political man who governs the commonweal and does his duty truly than in many thousands of monks and hermits.
Ooh, controversial.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Russell Moore would not approve. This is not Russell Moore approved episode, by the way.
Not at all. Or David French. Part 1, Introduction. Having discussed the things or material cause of Christian nationalism, social customs, and civil law, which compose the totality of national action for the complete good, we now come to the chief agent of Christian nationalism. The national will alone cannot terminate immediately into national action. It must terminate upon a mediator, upon one who translates the national general will into specific commands of action and lead the nation to its good. In large part, Christian nationalism as a totality of national action is an orchestration of civil leadership. This chapter
let's pause. Let's pause.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Pause.
We're not going to get through the whole chapter today.
It's a long chapter.
Yeah, this is elite theory. This is Christian elite theory. You know, the trajectory of a political society is the product of decision makers. It's a product of people who set the tone and the pace and the framework for where the society will go. It's something that doesn't come into being by itself. We believe in that humans are agents and that they organize and cooperate, and they're the ones that transform. Their mechanisms or mediators, as Stephen Wolfe says, that take the political general will, unify it, and put it into action. So I think this is important because people always, sometimes they can talk about politics in terms of impersonal forces, like the Constitution is doing this, but it's actually behind the scenes. It's all just people. And that's why politics is important, because it's the contest to see which people will be leading the political society.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, he doesn't specifically get into this in these terms, but you had people asking you online, just the other day about elite theory and populism, and you mentioned Neiman Parvini's book, The Populist Delusion, and that's where I've in the last 3 or 4 years ended up is thinking, right, there's no such thing as democracy or populism. Like thousands or millions of random people don't decide anything. Individuals do. That's the way that it works. And even like one step deeper to that, like there is no moment where you wake up the sheeple, right? You don't wake
Right.
You don't wake them up and then, like, because that's when we were talking about libertarianism a few weeks ago. that's kind of the delusion that a lot of us were under.
Mm-hmm.
Is, oh, if we just persuade 50% plus one of the population of how things actually work, and they know the truth, then that's how we win. And it's like, no, people don't do that.
Yeah,
Ever.
but this is also why, like, people say that if you want a Christian society, you have to convert people. It's like, no, that's not how society functions. You don't just go knocking on doors until 51% of the people believe in Christian, and then you can have a Christian policy. It's like, no, the people absorb the narratives, priorities coming down from on high, and that's the
Yeah.
importance of this mediator. This is the
Yeah.
importance of the
Yeah.
Christian prince.
Yeah. You don't. That's not how Christendom was formed from the get-go. And this is why a lot of people who have imbibed Enlightenment individualism, and they're more Baptist. I'm not bashing Baptists. Just don't think I'm doing that. But they have this very Baptistic individualistic mindset where, right, if you want Christian governance and things like, you want Christian society, right, you have to have mass conversion, meaning you have to get, every single person has to make their individual decision for Christ, and you have to get 50% plus one of that. Similar to like how the libertarians think.
Mm-hmm.
And the original Christian, that's not what happened, right? The king converted, right? You think of all the various kings that converted from paganism.
Yeah.
Or
why did the Vikings convert? It wasn't because they had they all read their Bible. It's because their king converted.
Yeah, and then they read the Bible, and then they believed it. Right. That's what happened, and so that's how these things work. And so, if you want, and people just, they respond to incentives. We've talked about this a million times. Like, why overnight after Obergefell does the whole country decide, oh, gay marriage is fine now? It's because power decided it for them.
Yeah,
they didn't wake up one day and say, oh, we better stop being mean to gay people. We've been so mean, and now we're going to be nice.
Andrew.
No. Yes.
Andrew, I'm getting flooded with complaints. Turn up your volume.
Can't hear me?
Yeah.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Better.
All right. It's going to be loud. I'm going to be way louder. You're going to hate it.
Maybe find a happy medium. Because now I'm getting flooded with complaints in the other direction.
All right. Here we go. Now you can hear me. I hope. If you can't, let me know. Anyway, where were we, CJ?
Can't go see a doctor because, wow.
Yeah. Yes. All right, let's continue on. Let's continue on the chapter. Otherwise, we're never going to get through all of it, and it's important stuff. How about if I just talk like this? This chapter is a discussion of the efficient cause of Christian nationalism. That is, I discuss the agents that bring about the things of Christian nationalism. The efficient cause begins and ends with the people, their will and their concrete actions. But their will is mediated through civil leadership wielding the power to command action. Thus, Christian nationalism exists when the Christian national will for itself is mediated through Christian civil leaders who will command and inspire concrete actions performed by the people. So, that's basically the gist of it, right?
He just took our 10-minute conversation and turned it into a 30-second text.
Exactly.
Let's go read the book.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. My let me. Even Andrew's mic has been hitting the gym. I can hear the gains. So that's that's right. So you want to go ahead with part 2, CJ?
Sure, yeah.
People are sick of hearing my or not hearing my voice.
The Prince. Civil leadership is difficult to describe with specificity, since there are several types of civil leaders. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Protestant writers would speak of kings, princes, civil magistrates, governors, etc. Today we have presidents, congressmen, prime ministers, members of parliament, and others. And unlike many traditional civil polities, many countries today have an institutionalized separation of powers, such that, for example, the legislative, executive, judicial powers of civil government are located in different branches of government. I might have devoted this chapter to the role of civil government, a term that captures most of the civil roles and functions necessary for Christian nationalism. But this term is impersonal. That's what we were saying earlier. It's impersonal and emphasizes the administration of civil affairs, even connoting the work of bureaucracy and management. This is another thing, to take a break here, that's downstream from, we talk about the managerial revolution. I think that's important because it sort of transformed, it's not just American society. All of Western society was transformed into these, governments of governors. There's these people that are making decisions on behalf of the people, and it transformed it into this very impersonal, abstract corporation. And that's one of the consequences of the managerial revolution, is the state became a bureaucracy. It became something that exists in perpetuity, independent of persons, actors, agents. So that's what he's getting across here. I'll keep going. So
yeah, keep going.
I cannot conceive of a true renewal of Christian commonwealths without great men leading their people to it. Nor can we expect the national will to find its end through an administration led by wonks and regulators. So I will primarily use prince as the mediator of the nation's will for itself. This title denotes both an executive power, one who administers the laws, and personal eminence in relation to the people. The prince is the first of his people, one whom the people can look upon as father or protectorate of the country. I am not calling for a monarchical regime over every civil polity, and certainly not an autocracy, though I envision a measured and theocratic Caesarism, the prince as a world shaker for our time, who brings a Christian people to self-consciousness and who in his rise restores their will for their good. Prince is a fitting title for a man of dignity and greatness of soul who will lead a people to liberty, virtue, and godliness, to greatness. Man, I love this chapter. I mean, first of all, if you do the reading, you'll know that he's not calling for a monarchy, but his decision to use monarchical language is very intentional here. As he said, it's meant to repersonify the agent of Christian nationalism. People need to look to a person. They don't want to look to a bureaucracy. If you want to be inspired, if you want your soul to be uplifted, if you want to pursue higher things, God placed people as the mediator between the masses and those higher goods. He didn't place a bureaucracy. So that's sort of the product of materialism and scientific thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. We and it's hard for modern Americans that have been born into the managerial regime to think of anything other, and we think of the other as definitely tyrannical and totalitarian and evil, and you see this whenever there's discussion of the Constitution today, right? You see this, oh, these guys hate the Constitution, oh no, it's like, look around, look at the managerial regime that you live under today. It is far worse than anything that they rebelled against in 1776. Way worse. Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding
Way
me?
worse. I would love it if King George III was our ruler right now.
Michael O'Fallon always talks about this. He's like, these Christian nationalists want to end our constitutional system. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? The idea that we have a constitutional system today, it's really just, it's pathetic to continue to pretend, it's really LARPy to like act like you are defending something that died before you were born.
Yeah, it's so sad. And I think we should read the footnote. It's important to read the footnotes. The footnote here especially is really good. I'll go ahead and
number
read it,
2.
Yeah. Contrary to the calumnies of G.K. Chesterton against Caesarism, see his Heretics, chapter 19, men trust a great man not because they distrust themselves, but because social conditions deny their self-trust an outlet for noble action. And the great man offers a path to noble action, vis-a-vis a path out of ideological mediocrity, slavishness, and indignity. Caesarism is often described as authoritarian and autocratic by those who see politics dualistically. Regimes are either democratic or authoritarian or dictatorial. I reject the framing and would point out that modern democracy is often more oppressive than its alternatives. I prefer Caesarism in our time because it emphasizes personality in civil rulers, right? Yeah. And like you see that, and like people read that, right? You can imagine James Lindsay reading that, or Michael O'Fallon, or David French, or Russell Moore, and losing their minds. What? How could you say that? Meanwhile, they're trying to jail the president of the United States, right? They're jailing all sorts of supporters. They're putting supporters of his in prison for standing in the wrong area in front of the Capitol.
This is another thing too that we've sort of touched on this in the past, but people are like, why Donald Trump? He's such an immoral person. It's like, because there's this natural inclination by people to look for persons. We look for agents. Yes. Like Donald Trump is someone that we can not me personally, but just the masses need somebody to look to. They need great men, and so for the lack of great men, we have people like Donald Trump. Nobody's inspired by the Department of Education. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah.
th-
Or I mean, even if you could name one that was like good, right?
yeah,
The Border Patrol Union. Like, oh yeah, I'm inspired by them.
yeah, exactly.
No, no, no. You
Yeah,
need
put that
a person to lead.
exactly. That's what he's driving at here. Is we were made for people, and the
Yeah,
mediator, the agent of national will, is made for us, and that's the way God designed it. So I'll keep going. If that's okay. Or
yeah. Part three. Yeah, go ahead.
part three, the origin of civil power. As a collective entity, a nation has a collective will for its collective good. It must have a collective will because the nation is a moral person responsible for itself before God. A collective will is expressed in the first person plural. We desire the good of the whole, the good of us as a people. This is national self love. Political theorists have long argued that a people's collective will is the means of consent to be under civil government. And I agree, but the nation can will only for its general good. Nations in themselves, viewed simply as a people, lack an ordering agent and so cannot effectively act for their own good in any immediate sense. Put differently, while each member of the nation might have perfect benevolence for the common good, there is no inherent or purely natural organization to the nation that permits people to realize their benevolence in action. The people lack coordination, and disorder, though unintended, will frustrate acts of good. The nation can act for its good, but only mediately. They must establish an ordering agent, namely a civil government. They must install a prince. The prince is the one through whom the people act for their own good.
Yeah, let's break that down a little bit. Right, you hear like collective will, right? Forms of respect or collective will must be communism. Socialism. It's socialism. Collective. That sounds like
Yeah,
comedy gobbledygook. To
people
quote
say
Norm
like
Macdonald.
you're not allowed. I mean, this is one of the fundamentals of liberalism: is you're not allowed to use the first person plural.
Yeah,
There's no we to desire the good of the whole. And so this is why politics is important too, because I mean, all of us know how abused the collective plural, the first person plural has become.
yeah.
Like that's what the COVID policy was about. It's for
Our democracy.
exactly. So, but politics is important because depending on who is in charge, depending on who the agent is, you're going to get definitions of the collective will based on that. So it's
Yeah,
not that we have to deny the collective will, it's that we have to choose between good and bad political leaders. And that's a choice that a lot of people want to avoid in our liberal state of mind, but we can't avoid it because when you avoid it, you get bad collective will.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, some of this too, to back up and maybe to backfill, the first six chapters of what he's talking about, and just the idea of nationalism. Like nations are things, right? They
Yes.
are a people, right? The
Yes.
United States of America, right? America is a nation. It's made up of people,
Mhm.
and I mean this is why rapid, massive demographic change is so destructive because
It's
you
not just
are
about legality or illegality.
yeah, yeah, whether they're legal or illegal or what, going back to the the State of the Union last week, right? It's
It's
you
just what
you
kind
in
of American are you?
yeah, yeah, exactly, the meme, right? You have you add tens of millions of people to a people and it's not the same people,
Mhm.
right? You no longer are that people, right? And you see this collective will, even in going back to the Constitution. Like you look at the preamble to the Constitution, right? For our posterity. Well, who's posterity? Who is that? Right? It's them and their descendants, right? The people
Yeah.
that are there, and the people that they collectively said we want to have these people come here, right?
Mhm.
That's who the nation is. And so if you change the entire configuration of a nation, you're changing the people. Like you're reordering that nation in a different way to have a different people, and it's no longer the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what people. I mean, part of like the Constitution is destroyed. Well, part of it is it's not the same people that made the U.S. Constitution, right?
Mhm.
And understood it, right? It's not, right? It's a different people. What is America, right? Even just the question of a nation. People look at it in the post-war liberal order that it's merely a collection of individuals, right?
Yeah.
There's no commonality, there's no shared culture or history or heritage or shared language. even. It's just whatever random people happen to end up in your economic zone, right?
Exactly.
That's how they view the nation.
And
And
that's what's wrong with propositional nationhood. This idea that all you have to do is assent to these like abstract propositions, and you can become a true American in the same sense that someone who inherited these things over 5 generations. And that's what's tearing us apart. I mean, that's diversity is our greatest weakness, because we have these completely disparate peoples trying to fit together in this like uniform propositional endeavor, and it's absurd, and it doesn't work, and it's not realistic anthropology.
yeah, and you see this in my own state, and there was also a state senator in Michigan, I think, that said the same stuff, that as Ilhan Omar, that my job here is to represent Somalia
Mm-hmm.
and to get as many gibs as I can for Somalia and send it back to Somalia.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That they consciously recognize that as their goal, and it's like that. You mean to tell me? Because I've been told this my whole life living here in Minnesota, that those people there, right? They're just as American as you and me, right? They're just as. It's like they don't even think that,
Yeah.
right? They don't even. They're not American. They have
Yeah.
and they're not going to assimilate it and think. Oh, and they think about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. They're like, those are our presidents. This is my heritage. No, never are they going to. And so that's I mean we talked about months ago with the Michael Anton piece, that when you introduce millions of people that have nothing in common with you whatsoever, and you they have no desire to adopt those things in common with you, that then you don't have a country anymore, right? You don't have a nation. And so the question, I mean, that precedes all of this is America a nation, right? Is it even a country? And I think it is, right? The people that think of themselves as American and say, well, what nationality? Oh, I'm American, right? This is
Yeah.
my country. Right? Those are Americans. Those are our people, right? When we say our people, that's what they are. And so, yeah, we so bearing all that in mind, we can proceed here. So
Yeah.
continue on if you remember where you left off.
Yeah. Let's see, what paragraph was I on. I actually changed my browser here, so let's
Oh
see.
man, this
Now,
is why. Here's CJ, who's anti
I know. See, this is
technology and everything else.
why.
Who has the paper copy? Me. Who has the digital one? CJ. So let the record show. All
Let
right.
the record show. Yes, the consequences of betraying my Ludditism.
That's right.
So I think I'm on this paragraph.
The will.
Yeah, the will of the people is not a set of policies, as if the prince were a mere delegate to enact their will concerning particulars. Rather, the people's collective will expresses consent to be ordered according to both the general conception of the common good and their own particularities. They place trust in the prince as an intermediary to actualize their good. Hence, the prince is not bound to any specific dictates of the people, though certainly these should be taken seriously when expressed clearly. He is bound to what is good, namely the moral law of God. Now, since the nature of man necessitates civil society, and since the nature of that society requires an ordering agent, the power of that ordering agent must be natural as well. This is a consequence of natural reason. Would God create something that lacks what is necessary for that thing to achieve its purpose? Would God create human society with an inherent need for an ordering agent and not provide the power for ordering? No. God's designs are always coherent. It follows that the power of the civil power is part of the created order. As Samuel Rutherford writes, God and nature intendeth the policy and peace of mankind. Then must God and nature have given to mankind a power to encompass this end. And this must be a power of government. But what is the origin of this power? Should I stop?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Unless you had a comment. Yeah.
Nope. What is the origin of this power? Perhaps the right to rule is inherent to the nature of certain individuals. They are born, in other words, with magisterial power. But as the Western tradition has long affirmed, men are by nature free and equal in relation to each other. Thus, as Francisco Suarez stated, no person has political jurisdiction over another person, even as no person has dominion over another. But differently, no one possesses an inherent natural superiority in relation to other men, such that by pure nature alone, natural inferiors are bound to by their nature to submit to them.
Yeah, we should read the footnote too. Read the.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't because you're on the digital.
I
I'll read it. For example, children are bound by pure nature to submit to parents. given the nature of the parent-child relation. A child is not born free and equal in relation to parents, and thus consent is unnecessary for that relation. But in civil relations, no man is required, by his very nature, to submit to another. Civil subjection is a matter of consent. All right, so this is. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with what he's saying here, CJ?
Well, I don't quite agree with the and I don't want people to think that I'm saying Stephen Wolfe's a equalitarian or something, because he's not, obviously.
He's
But
a liberal.
there's the debate. There's the debate in historic Christian political theology about whether individuals are sort of naturally on equal plane, and the question is whether the authority that some have is artificial or organic or natural.
Mm-hmm.
Rutherford argues that it's sort of a construct of society, that one is chosen to be the ruler above them, nothing in himself. And so this is sort of the alternative version to divine right of kings, where there are some who inherited from their fathers this sort of like ongoing divine right. Basically, they were born in a different position. So that's sort of Rutherford was arguing against the divine right royalists in England, basically. Mm-hmm. So I think on that issue, I'm not a divine rightist like a lot of the royalists were, but I'm not a Rutherfordian either in that. So I do think that there is sort of a natural inequality, and I do think that it's historically situated. And I always bring up people like Richard Hooker and stuff, but I do side more with them that there is an organic hierarchy among people, and that there is no born equality, which is a little bit different than the Scottish, thinkers would have construed it, if that makes sense. It's not a huge difference, but
yeah, we're going on a tangent here, but that's the point. So Altex says natural obligation to obey rulers would imply that change of dynasty is never permissible. What do you think about that?
Change of yeah. So I actually agree with. So this is like contrasting this view with John Locke, right? Is that what's going on there?
I think so. Yeah,
because he's going to get into John Locke later. So I actually don't think John Locke thought that like every generation the consent needed to be refreshed. Mm-hmm. I don't think so. I think there is an inherited consent. There's inherited consent and an inherited rulership. I think that is ongoing. I think that's consistent with my view for sure.
I think there's a possibility though that like the natural, if you look at not quite divine right of kings, but rather a natural hierarchy that persists throughout generations, that they can mess up badly and forfeit their natural role, right? And you see this throughout history. So I think they can forfeit it, but ordinarily, you maintain the continuity, right? With that, am I saying anything too crazy there?
No, I mean, that's the debate. I think I'm more historically related, like in terms of like the history and development. I'm much more of a I don't really believe in continued consent. I think that we have to adhere to the leadership. Now, all that changed though, because we decided to completely revolutionize society. We abandoned the West, we abandoned our heritage, and when the political leadership in the West abandoned its heritage, we severed ourselves from the need to connect ourselves with that original consent. So I think it's over. Yeah. I think in pre-revolutionary times, I think that's the model I would have taken. But now all that's gone, and so now it's sort of like state of emergency at all times.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's continue on. I think we're on, but perhaps
you want to go?
Want me to read? Yeah, I'll read. Yeah. But perhaps civil powers, e.g., to punish evildoers or to exact restitution for injuries, are original to each individual and are transferred from individuals to civil rulers. This is the view of John Locke, who wrote that the execution of the law of nature is in that state of nature put into every man's hands, whereby everyone has a right to punish the transgressors of that law to such a degree as may hinder its violation. His reason for this view is similar to Rutherford's, quoted above. Locke writes, the law of nature would be in vain if there were no body that in the state of nature had a power to execute that law. That is, nature demands that this power exists. Locke, however, locates this power in each and every individual, not in the community, a position he admits is a strange doctrine. It is worthwhile to reconcile these views, for it permits us to recognize both collective and individual powers. By pure nature, every man has certain powers of his own. Rutherford rightly says, for example, that we defend ourselves from violence by violence as a consequence of unbroken and sinless nature. The duty of self-preservation entails a right to self-defense. As I contend with Locke, that individuals, when outside the jurisdiction of civil government, are permitted to punish transgressors of the natural law, and I agree that individuals transfer these powers to civil rulers in trust for their execution. Nevertheless, civil power, as to its principal part, cannot have in its origin in individuals, for no man has an inherent power to bind another man's conscience to particular applications of natural law for the common good. That is, no man, by right of his nature, can order the whole. He cannot command his neighbor to obey his positive judgments on particular actions that conduce to the common good. Only the Lord of the conscience has this power, namely God. Thus, as Rutherford states, all civil power is immediately from God in its root. The power to order the whole must come from God. It does not inhere in or originate from any man or men in aggregate. So, yeah, we should stop for a moment and talk about this a bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Lockean theory.
Yeah, this is. I mean, Locke is so hard. I don't even know if I want to get deep into Locke, because like so many people claim him. So it's like, whose Locke are we talking about here? But I do agree with Rutherford on this, that what he says is basically the person himself originates from the people, from the original consent, but the function or the authority originates from God. So it's like the coming together of God's will and the people's consent, inherited consent, the people as a whole, not individuals, but the people as as an entity in itself, this first person plural. It's the person himself is a product of their own heritage and their own history, but the function is created by God. So it's this unity of God's purpose sanctifying man's desires, right?
Yeah, and that's the controversy right now. You know, we've titled this, Dangerous Christian Nationalism broadcast, and you have these people today who are saying, if you think your rights come from God, if you think civil power or the power of the state comes from God, you are a Christian nationalist and you're very dangerous and very bad.
Can I answer this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead with the.
So this question says, why not have a Christian king? Why not?
Not like his novel,
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a good question. But the answer, Tim Miller says that. Yeah. So the answer, my answer, I think Stephen would agree with this, is because there's always particularity. Like what Andrew and I aren't sitting here idealizing and blueprinting out the ideal society. We're saying, what is our own history set up for us to do right now? And it's not to have a king. It's a
prudential question. Yeah.
There's no natural royalty that we could do. I mean, we're actually, and I don't want to pin this on Stephen, although he might agree, we're actually more suited right now for a dictator than a king. That's just the way, a Caesar, like a Caesar figure.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where we are. It's not really in our bones, in our natural situation to have a king. So this is very particularistic. We have our own society, our own background, and we have to act politically in light of that. That's why we're not sitting here. Like if I was speaking as an Englishman, right now I'd probably want Prince William to take the reins, recapture all power,
dissolve Parliament, and just rule.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's not part of our game. So we have to deal with what we have. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I would add, that like the idea, I mean, that what you just said probably will get clipped and used against us someday. But
it's hard of walking on eggshells.
Well, yeah, but the reality is, we already have a dictatorial regime. It's diffused through bureaucracy and administrators and everything else. Yeah, but in order. I mean, you see Trump himself saying this. I'm gonna have to rule as a dictator for a couple of days. He senses this kind of mood that people are like, if all these things, if the Constitution has allowed all of this stuff, somebody has to clear all of it out, and we're ready for that.
Let me give an example. Friedrich Hayek, who's a classical liberal,
par excellence,
he was asked, right. So James Lindsay should be okay with this. So Friedrich Hayek was sort of like, how does Chile deal with the fact that the bureaucracies in Chile were completely overtaken by Marxism, like the entire society, the political leadership. And what he said is, in order for Chile to maintain its heritage and to recapture liberty, you couldn't work through a captured bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You had to have somebody take power and forcefully remove the Marxists in power and to reestablish liberty in society. That requires dictatorial powers in pursuit of what? In pursuit of liberty. So dictatorship is a tool that a classical liberal suggested Chile use in order to address a specific type of enemy. So dictatorialism is not this ideal. He's not blueprinting out society. He's saying, here's the threat, bureaucratic Marxism, and here's the solution, somebody who takes it upon himself to reestablish Chilean heritage. And whether or not that's good or not, that's what's going on there. It's this particularistic solution to a particular problem.
You already had this in American history once upon a time, right? You had this.
It's all throughout history.
Well, yeah, but one clear, prime, obvious example of there is a threat to your existence as a people, and we are going to give all the power to one man, and he's going to deal, even before that, he's going to deal with this threat and then relinquish power when it's all over, right? And that is George Washington. That's, the American Cincinnatus. Right, that's what we had. That, right, we had a Pinochet. His name was George Washington, and we did. Yeah. That's what happened. I mean, it goes back to what we said, last year in one of these, where he violated the Constitution that was extant at the time. He broke the law. He committed treason, right, to deal with the enemy, and cleared out the enemy, and relinquished power, and set up a system where there was tremendous amount of liberty for the people. Right, that's what happened. Yeah. We have that example in our history, right? It's there, and you don't want to go there. You don't want to talk about those things because you want your comfy little cozy blankie called the Constitution.
You want to pretend like it's 1870 or something.
Yeah, it's not. It's not at all. So, right, when you get into these discussions, you have to understand the reality of the situation where we are today, and people don't want to go like the whole grift, Con Inc. right. Right, they want to. It's very comfy for them, right? And all the donors that watch Fox News all day long that send them their money to say America's fine. We just got to restore the Constitution, and that's the solution, right? You'll make a lot of money if you just repeat that shibboleth over and over and over again, right? All the people will send their checks to you if you say we got to restore the Constitution and believe in America again, right? That's over. That doesn't work. That's a dead end. And so that's why we discuss these things. And it's much deeper political philosophy than just obey the Constitution, we'll be good, right? That's there's more to it than that. So let's continue on. We got enough time to maybe make it through this section. We'll see. I'll finish this page out, or the next page out. Yet we should say with Suarez that God does not give this power by a special act or grant distinct from creation. This would require him to manifest it through revelation. Civil power is neither inherent nor adventitious to man. God does not ordinarily declare by his special revelation that this or that person has civil power. Right? That is extremely important point. Right? Not even just declaring this guy is going to be the king. Thus saith the Lord. Right? You have that only in the barest example of David, for example. Right. Everywhere else, it happens through the created order. Right. That's how it happens. And that's why the Bible doesn't give a specific system of government. Because
you're sounding less theonomic these days, Andrew.
I guess I am. I don't know. I mean, I still love my theonomous homies, but no, everywhere else, like, do you want to have a constitutional republic with a limited electorate? Okay, in that particularity, it works. Do you want to have a tribal chief? Right. Well, in some particularities, that works. Right. Do you want to have a king or an emperor? Right. And in some situations that works too. It depends on
Depends on the
the
threat.
place and time and what they need.
Yeah.
So why don't you continue on here with this
Okay.
quote from Suarez?
From Suarez, we are.
Yeah, rather
Yeah, rather.
it is a
Seeing rather.
characteristic.
No. No. Did you say put differently? No one possesses an inherent natural.
While
Who
you're
said?
looking for that, I'll address this. I thought from Forum's Respecter, I thought democracy was the only Bible-approved form of government. That is what Owen Strahan taught me. Well, um, it is kind of funny how that turns out that way. What a coincidence that the entire post-war order just
Yeah.
perfectly fits with the Bible. What a weird coincidence. How about that?
How blessed we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
All right. Rather, it is a characteristic property resulting from nature, writes Suarez, and he continues. This civil power does not emerge in human nature until men gather in one perfect community and unite politically. Once constituted, this body is at once and by force of natural reason the site of this civil power. The power is correctly understood then only as a property entailed by such a mystical body so constituted. So that was Suarez's outdated language. The people possess civil power as a necessary and natural consequence of their combination. One important corollary, I can never say this word, corollary, is that recognizing the true God is unnecessary to possess this power. This bears on the debates over whether the magistrate today needs to be a Christian or not.
Yep.
We could get into that another time, but that's an interesting one. So, anyways, is unnecessary to possess this power is simply a natural consequences of the people's combination into human society, and they can likewise devolve this power upon those who do not recognize the true God. Hence, true civil authority does not depend on true religion. Though certainly in failing to acknowledge the divine source of civil authority, the people and civil ruler are in a perilous situation. It doesn't bode well for them, but being godless or idolatrous does not itself preclude true political order. Hence, Peter instructs his recipients to honor the Roman emperor in 1 Peter 2:17.
Yeah.
So
that's
I agree
an
with
important point.
I think a lot of people who are in the so-called Christian nationalist space would have trouble with this, but this is one area that I side with. This is one of many areas that I side with Stephen Wolfe here. In fact, what you're going to get if you have you have to be a confessional Christian to be a good political leader is actually you're going to get a leftist progressive, God, Jesus blessed, immigration and stuff. That's what you're going to get.
The abortion clinics and everything.
So there's more to just the label, you know what I mean? So that's why I would take a right-wing leader like Paul Gottfried's not a confessing Christian, but I appreciate his political insight more than Russell Moore's.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it like I remember back, and I always make this point. So if I've made it a million times, forgive me. But the Iowa forum that Tucker did last summer, where he interviewed all the candidates, and you have like Tim Scott out there, and he's apparently evangelical Christian guy, and he's in Iowa, so he's going to play that up. And he goes on, he grabs the microphone, goes onto the stage, and he's preaching a sermon, right? They're thinking, oh, here's this this black dude who's preaching like a black Baptist sermon, like hallelujah, and speaking their language and everything. Meanwhile, right, the next he sits down, he's like, yeah, we gotta send a bajillion tanks and F-16s to Ukraine and make sure millions more people die. Right, that's my position as the evangelical Christian guy, and like everything completely coordinated and aligned with the priorities of the regime, right? And so this is what they do. They wear what you are as a skin suit. Yeah. And I mean the discontinuity between him and someone like Donald Trump, who no one, I mean, unless you like really believe in him and you're like, almost cultic figure, right? You don't think he's a Christian. You think this is not a faithful, godly man in any sense. And he's like, I just want there to be less people dying in war. That would be good, right? Yeah. Like, which is the more Christian position, right? Which is the more Christian ruler among the two? Or Vivek is very much the same way, right? At least if you can trust him. He's saying much of the same things. Who would you rather have, right? the guy who's quoting Bible verses left and right. Meanwhile, like he's trying to get on the board of Boeing and Lockheed and and Raytheon, or and sending $11 billion to Ukraine every 5 minutes,
Mhm.
or the guy who wants there to be peace and doesn't want the regime to slaughter millions. Right? Which
Yeah.
which one's better? Like that. So like that along those lines, I look at it that way with what Stephen is saying. That ideally, right, in an ideal form, would Christian people want to have a Christian ruler? Of course. Absolutely you would. Right? Yeah, if all things being equal and they have the same positions and they're both for our good, um you want the Christian. But
Yeah.
all things are not equal.
Yeah,
So
this also pertains to the debate about whether like Stephen Wolfe is a theocrat.
yeah.
Like it's, he's obviously not. I mean, he's sourcing his authority and vision of the cosmos in the natural order. And a lot
Yeah.
of Christians in our time have betrayed that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
all right,
exactly.
I'll go another paragraph. Now,
Go
although
ahead.
combining into civil society is instinctive to man, the combination itself is voluntary. It is similar to marriage in this regard. By natural instinct, men and women are drawn toward marriage, but the union of any particular man and woman is a matter of choice. Likewise, the instinctive act of forming a civil society is voluntary. But unlike the family, in which domestic power is immediately granted to the man, civil power is, so to speak, a natural attribute of a perfect human community, viewed as such, writes Suarez, and it may be taken from that community by its own consent or through some other means and transferred to another. The community possesses that power in indefinite form, and they must evolve it into a definite form, into a particular civil arrangement. Thus, as Rutherford writes, this or that power is mediately from God, proceeding from God by the mediation of the consent of a community, which resigneth their power to one or more rulers. Consent is the mechanism by which divine civil power is bestowed upon a prince. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's
Yeah.
like this combination of God creating the function and sanctifying the will and voice of the people, from the grassroots up to not from the grassroots, but from the people, to fill the authority that God made for that people with a specific person.
Yes. Let's
So
continue on. You want me to read
yeah,
this one?
yeah, go ahead.
Here we go. We should emphasize that bestowing civil power upon civil leaders, though natural and necessary, is not perfunctory or performed carelessly or without caution or watchfulness. As Junius Brutus, author of Vindiciae contra Tyrannos, said, everyone consents that men by nature loving liberty and hating servitude, born rather to command than obey, have not willingly admitted to be governed by another, and renounced, as it were, the privilege of nature by submitting themselves to the command of others, but for some special and great profit that they expected from it. So that's the quote from Vindiciae contra Tyrannos. The proper motivation to submit arises not from viewing domination as a good in itself, nor from a psychological need to feel dominated. These are effeminate motivations. The proper this is a
So
funny
true.
book. The proper motivation is quite the opposite. Submission is motivated by the rational need for ordered liberty, wherein one finds opportunity to act with his neighbor for his own good and his neighbor's good. Submission is good only insofar that it conduces to living well. Being a means, it is not an end in itself. The people transfer the power in trust, and so civil leaders hold a fiduciary power. We should never forget that although the power of civil leaders is rooted in God, they possess this power immediately and conditionally by an act of the people and in trust for their good. And we should never suppress that natural love of liberty and the manly desire to command ourselves. Right? It's interesting because like I look at this. You see this in discussions about like the family, where you know Ephesians 5 and 6 and so forth, and wives submitting to their husbands and think and the feminists are like, they're so horrible, that's so terrible. Even the soft complementarians, it's conditioned on the husband loving the wife, things like that, where it's like, no, Paul's just describing the natural order, right?
Yeah.
That he's just plainly stating this is the way things are, is wives submit to their husbands and that you should live in conformity with it. You should do that. And husbands should love their wives. And you look at that And how does it function? Well, how does a wife submit to her husband? It's because the husband is pursuing the good of them as a married couple and a family, right? That's why, right?
Yeah.
That's naturally what and even there, it's rational. It makes sense. Um, and it's the same way with political order, right? That people don't submit to a king or a ruler or a president or a constitution, um, merely out of this psychological need, like I have to have somebody ruling over me. They do it because that's where order arises from, and it's good for them and for their neighbors, for everybody else, for there to
Mhm.
be civic order, right? That's why, right? Going back to why aren't we libertarians anymore? It's the recognition of that someone
Yeah.
has to rule, someone will rule, and you
Yeah.
either have a good ruler or a bad one, right? There is not a situation where there is no ruler, right? There is no Lockean state of nature, right? Even right, you read like Little House on the Prairie and Laura Ingalls Wilder, and like they're out there on the frontier all by themselves, but there still are other people and community, and there has to be order, right? There's still governance that exists, even
Mhm.
in a quasi state of nature. And
Mhm.
so, right, do you want to keep going on number 4, or we're almost out of time
How long
here?
is it?
Oh, it's long. Maybe that's for
Yeah,
part 2.
let's take
Yeah.
a break there.
Let's.
I think on that. But yeah, no. So I think the general, I mean, this is good because I mean, people have these conceptions of what Christian nationalism is, but
Yeah.
Stephen Wolfe is very clearly rooting the authority that the Christian Prince has in the people. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's not this like absolute dictatorship in this way. It's
No.
if dictatorship is a tool, that's something worth talking about, and maybe we'll talk about that with Paul Gottfried or something. But the point
Yeah.
is that it's not this absolute. This is not the way. He's not dreaming up a political society. He's recognizing that the Christian Prince comes from somewhere. The
Yeah.
Christian Prince is rooted somewhere. He's not chosen directly by God, but it's by God mediating his will through the experience of the people. This is what I call the sanctification of history. That
Hmm.
God's will, it acts through the people to choose who's going to hold the power in trust. I mean, that's sort of the doesn't mean we have to always individually consent like Thomas Jefferson suggested or something,
Hmm.
but it does mean that ultimately the Christian Prince can breach that. And so then, I mean, talking about our own political leadership today, we could have conversations about whether they've breached our heritage. And if you don't say yes, you're insane.
Exactly. Well, there's one question here going back to the chat. We'll pop into the chat here. Right. I think we got time for this one because it's a good one. And we've talked about him a little bit in the past, but Logan Church Owens says a more controversial example of this of dictatorial power um, or a state of emergency, someone taking power in the Caesarist kind of way. A more controversial example of this is Napoleon. LOL. Thoughts on him?
Yeah. um,
What
I
do you
think
think, CJ?
I think what Napoleon exemplifies is if good people don't take up the vacuum of power, then bad people will. So I don't
Yeah.
think Napoleon took Europe in the right direction,
No.
but somebody had to do it. And the fact that nobody did it left it to Napoleon. He's the one that bent down into the gutter and picked up the crown. And that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen, by the way. That's what
Yeah.
Carl Schmitt warned about in Germany, is if nobody good does it, somebody bad will do it. And that's I
Yeah.
think I think of anything, people say, oh, you guys are pro dictator, you want a Caesar to come. It's like, no, we're in a bad crisis. And if nobody good does it, it will transform into
Yeah.
somebody bad.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, one of the things that hangs over everything, and I talked about this on Twitter a little bit, is every 100 days, the United States goes, every 100 days, the United States goes $1 trillion further into debt. And
Yeah.
this is before, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and everything become insolvent, right?
Mhm.
And that's all funny money and kind of fiction anyway. But the mandate to pay those payments is hanging out there. And how are they going to do it? There will be a day of reckoning, monetarily in America. This is the thing, the libertarians constantly have been warning about for 40 or 50 years. And right, they always jump the gun and think it's right around the corner. That's where they get it wrong. right? Peter Schiff thinks that, it's going to happen tomorrow. And so they sound like Chicken Little a little bit. But one day the sky does come falling down. It is going to happen. And so if you think about that, you think, okay, if the dollar collapses, if there's financial insolvency with the United States federal government, there is chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Total political chaos and anarchy. And a lot of right-wing people, libertarians, people on the right in general think, all right, I can't wait for the collapse to come, because when the collapse comes, then our beautiful reordering society is going to happen, and the good guys will win. And it's like, no, that's not what happens in history when there is a collapse of a regime.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, right? You look at Russia in 1917, right? The Tsar's regime collapses, and who takes over, right? You look at France in 1789, right? The Ancien regime collapses. Who takes over? Right? Radicals that murder everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens. And so in America, who's well organized and has a lot of power and can summon tens of thousands of people to riot at the drop of a hat, right? Including tons of criminals, right? Who has that power? Not the right. The right doesn't have that power. Who has that? The left does. The radical left does. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing you have to bear in mind. As things will spiral out of control, do the institutions and structures to maintain order exist that can restore the country when the day of reckoning is at hand? And
I don't think so. I see. Yeah, this is another thing too. Is like Stephen Wolfe is basically describing the relationship between the person who holds power and the people over whom that person holds power. But I think that right now we live in a state where we don't have the ability to communicate our consent in a legitimate way. And so whoever does have power is going to do so without consent.
Yeah.
That's the nature of Caesarism.
Yeah.
So it's what we're saying. What we're saying is we're not trying to reorder society along Lockean terms, but there's going to come a day when somebody does capture power and he's going to have nobody's consent. That's the mandate of heaven, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, so. And we can hope. I mean, what my hope, and this is something when we have Charles Haywood on again someday very soon, to discuss with him, because the hope would have to be a member of the elite would be the one that picks up the crown in the gutter, right? That end is on our side, right? Yeah. That's what you have to hope. And you think, okay, if I am a scion of the establishment right? If I'm one of the kids of the Bushes or something, I've thought about this quite a bit. Like if I was just there and existed, right, and I wasn't totally evil, which this is a stretch, but and I'm thinking, my country needs me. That's what you think. Like here are all you watch. I mean, you watch the Trump rallies and things like that. Yeah. You see the popularity that he has because he can signal to the people, I'm on your side. I'm fighting for you. They got to see it. Somebody's got to see it. They just the incentive isn't there for them to stick their neck out.
Is Eric Prince okay? Last question. Is Eric Prince the guy?
I don't know. I hope he is, but he's been
interesting lately.
The things he's been saying is very interesting.
Very, very interesting.
I mean, he talks about Haiti. Like we could go in there and clean it up in a couple weeks, right? But I think this from Trey Mays. In a way, was Trump a member of the elite who picked up that crown? In a sense, right? In a sense, I
think he signaled that there was a crown to pick up. I mean,
that's more than anything. Yeah. That he showed that there it is, laying right there, and he's not able to. It's too heavy for him. Right, yeah. Aaron Trump is watching this. That's right. Is he the Kwisatz Haderach? I don't know. But no, it more than anything, he showed that it exists and it's there and it's ready for someone. Exactly. Who it is, I mean, we're just going to speculate till the day is long.
Until he reveals himself. Yeah.
I'm mispronouncing Vindiciae contra tyrannos. All right. Type in the chat phonetically how to pronounce it correctly.
Isn't it Vindiciae or something?
Vindiciae, I think, I'm
It's
unlearned.
okay.
Everyone knows this.
I had a
Yeah.
mispronunciation.
Yeah, corollary.
Corollary.
But no,
Corollary.
I think back to this point, like no one in 2014 knew Donald Trump was going to be the thing that he is in 20. I thought it was a joke when he'd go on Fox News or CNN and talk about Obama's birth certificate or whatever, and trade with China and immigration. I was like, this guy's a clown. This is a joke, and
maybe a clown country needs a clown.
Yeah. Yeah, so comedian Sam Hyde will be the guy. I don't know, but no, I don't know. Nobody knows Spanish pronunciation. Who cares? This is America. We speak English. No, I don't know. I don't know. None of, and anybody who like claims to know is probably wrong. Right.
Yeah.
I have no idea who it would be, but I know the conditions are there that exists, that someone, and maybe they do look at it and they think, and they see the things that have happened to Trump. And this is the reason for the merciless political prosecution and persecution of Donald Trump, is not that he himself is this tremendous threat to them. Right. That's how they play it up.
To scare people away from taking up that role.
It's a signal to any other elite watching. This is what we will do to you if you cross us. If you do try to pick this thing up and put it on your head, it's a signal to someone like Elon Musk, maybe. Right? That's Haywood's guy, right? He thinks it's Haywood thinks it's Musk. Maybe it is. I don't know.
It's not.
But I don't think so. I don't think so either.
He's way too optimistic about us. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, that's for next week when we're in person together. But anything that you got, the Chronicles podcast is rolling. There's some really good.
Oh, and thank you.
Really good episodes of important topics. So tell the people about that.
Chronicles Magazine podcast. It's on YouTube. Should be on Spotify this weekend. I'm substacking. That's a verb, right? I'm substacking. I'm stacking at, what is my thing? Is it cjingle.substack.com and then at Contra Mordor for Twitter. So
and so go to Contra Mundum podcast.com and you can support the show there. That we've had numerous supporters join recently. Hopefully more. We will have a special guest this month for subscribers only. And
maybe it'll be Eric Prince. Maybe
we'll try to get him on the line. Maybe
no
it will
promises.
Be. No promises there. That would be awesome. But we're going to continue doing that, rolling those things out. People will get access to CJ's private Substack, right? The really juicy stuff when they sign up. Yeah,
Andrew's over there writing under my name.
Yeah. But please go there. Please like this episode, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single episode. Especially next week will be a great episode because everyone will be able to see how much taller I am than CJ. And it'll be awesome. So that is really all we have for this time. We'll jump into part 2 of The Christian Prince in a few weeks. But until next week, when we see you all live in person, stay peacefully dangerous. Sorry, we're all going to make it. There was no time for you today. Maybe you'll be down there in person with us. I don't know. Maybe we'll have time next week. But for all of us here, thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.